I'm here with Vincent and Adrian, of course. And who do we have here, Adrian?
This is Sylvester.
Sylvester. Okay, now, obviously looking at them, they're both crocodiles. But they're different, aren't they? So I've got a saltwater crocodile.
Yeah.
And you've got a freshwater crocodile.
Freshwater crocodile. Yep.
So, what's the difference between the two? This one's likely to eat me, is that right?
Yeah, those guys can eat people. They eat big prey. They grow large. They can get 5-6 meters long. 5 or 6 meters. That's pretty big for yes. If you could imagine 5 or 6, like. So how old is this one then? It's a big animal. So Vincent's only 1 year old.
1 year old. So in terms of how big Vincent was when he was born, how big would he have been?
Oh, he's about doubled in size.
Doubled in size. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah. And how long before they get to that 5 or 6 meters?
Well, they can get, in a couple of years, they can get a metre plus. But, I mean, decades and decades to get to that size. Yeah,
and we do know that there are a lot of reptiles that do live quite a long time, like turtles, for example. So crocodiles live for quite a few years?
Yeah, I mean, we know that there are salties that live over 70 years, and it's estimated that they may live up to 100 plus, but no one's been able to scientifically prove it, but it's very possible.
Very possible. Okay, so Sylvester this is Vincent, that's Sylvester. Sylvester's freshwater, this is saltwater croc. So what's the main difference? Obviously, the water in which they live?
Yeah, I mean, these guys, the freshies can get up to live in the estuarine environment where the salties like to live. But the reason they don't is because the salties like to live there. So the estuarine's where the river meets the sea, and there's lots of food there for the crocodiles. So that's why the big, tough salties dominate that area, and the freshies are down in the poorer feeding grounds down in the rivers.
Okay, and what's interesting is the way. So you showed me a bit before how to hold it. So the way that we're holding them at the moment. Obviously, you couldn't hold a 5 meter croc like this. But why hold them this particular way?
Well, we don't want to get bitten because they've got a very powerful bite, and they won't just be happy snapping on you. They'll grab and rip, particularly the freshies, and that surprises people because we worry about saltwater crocodiles in the wild, and freshwater crocodiles in the wild tend to leave us alone, so people assume they're safe. That's because they've never tried to pick one up.
Of course, and obviously they're quite calm. It's very gentle, the way that we're holding them, aren't they? They're just kind of resting in there.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, where in Australia do we find the two different kinds of crocs in terms of geographical areas? Obviously, we hear about them in the places like Kakadu in the Northern Territory. Where do we find, for example, let's start with the freshies. Where do we generally find them?
Well, I mean, both crocodiles are limited to the tropical regions of the earth, and that's all crocodiles. They live in the tropical regions. Unlike alligators, which if we had them in Australia, they would live in Adelaide quite happily. They can live where the water freezes over. But these guys like the water temperature to be above 20 degrees. And the freshies come pretty far inland, like hundreds of k's inland, and because they follow the freshwater ecosystems. But these guys pretty much along the estuarine environment, the saltwater crocodiles. And freshies are endemic to Australia, so that means they're found nowhere else but in Australia.
Okay, so they're our own special crocs?
That's our own crocodile, yeah. Whereas salties can be found in places like Borneo, Southeast Asia and things. They can swim across the oceans.
Wow, that's pretty... They can swim the oceans.
It's amazing, yeah. There are studies where they just take crocodiles from their homes and just bop them in the middle of the ocean, and they find their way back. So they've got a very sophisticated olfactory part of their brain.
So I see. And the other interesting thing is that I remember being up at Kakadu, and they talked about how in the flood season, when the floodwater rises, they often get the salties kind of moving around even further because that salt water spreads further. So you've got to be really careful.
Always, yeah, absolutely. Always be croc smart. I mean, it's a great idea for anyone that's going up north and going into croc country to go to one of the crocodile parks and see a crocodile show, because it just gets you. You're about to be death row.
I'm about to be attacked by a How many of you have been attacked by a saltwater crocodile? No, but obviously he's just nice and gentle. That's cool. Okay, so what can you tell us, Adrian, about the biology of these things?
Yeah, no worries. So all crocodilians, and that's alligators, gharials, caimans, false gharials, and crocodiles, have webbed feet at the back, not the front, so beautifully adapted to life in the water, and that's evolved over hundreds of millions of years. They've got a laterally compressed tail, which is like a rudder, and they use it for propulsion and steering. They've got some interesting valves on their body. So on their nostrils, if you've ever had water up your nose and it feels awful, they can close their nostrils, they can close their ears, and they can close their throat so they can catch food underwater and close their throat. They've also got a nictitating membrane, just like birds. They've got that third eyelid that sweeps across the sideways instead of being up and down like our eyelids. And that's like having swimming goggles. So when you're swimming, you've got a pair of swimming goggles on. So beautiful adaptations.
So they've got all of the things they need, which is obviously why they have been so successful in surviving. Thank you so much, Adrian. We're going to come back to you another day because we're going to stick to a good thing. Thank you, Adrian from Animals Anonymous. And thank you to Vincent and...
Sylvester.
Sylvester.
Thank you for having me.
Cheerio.